My theory at the heart of it is that when you're listening, you're always listening to a story. So whether that's one word, one sentence, one paragraph, whether you're with the Uber driver or your son, you're in a story all the time. And your job as the listener is to organize the speaker to tell their story in a way you can understand.
You're listening to Stories from the Top, an inside guide to better business development. So we're here with Christine Miles. She is the founder of The Listening Path, a keynote speaker and author. Christine, thanks so much for coming in today.
Thanks for having me. It's good to see you guys.
Of course. And for those who may not know you, can you just give us a little introduction to who you are, your background, and what The Listening Path is?
Sure. I'm, as you said, Christine Miles. I'm the founder of EQuipt, the creator of The Listening Path, which I'll share more about. And I'm in the Philadelphia area. I've been for a very long time. And, I love it here. I love serving the businesses around here. So we basically, as a company, equip people with the human skills to counteract all the things that are happening in the world so that people show up differently, that can really lead and serve with the best emotional skills possible, which is how people really show up in the best possible way. And the foundation for all that was listening. So I created a path that helps people learn this very valuable skill that isn't taught simply in a scalable way, in a way that's teachable.
Yeah, it's such a niche thing. Everyone's always talking about how to communicate better, but it's very rarely talk about listening. How did you get into that mindset? Where did this start?
Yeah, well, as you know, I could lay down for this, but as Freud would say, it started really young for me. It's been what I've dedicated my entire life and career to. But it started when I was very young. My mother suffered from mental illness stemming from the loss of her mother. Her mother died from childbirth, essentially 3 months after my mother died. My mother was born, my grandmother died. And it set my mother up for a life of kind of feeling like she was the cause of her mother's death and a lot of pain that was going on below the surface. My mom longed for a girl. This is the part where Freud gets involved, and because she was motherless. And so when I came into the world, it was really talked about that my job was to understand her pain and her loss. And I also saw that most people didn't understand the pain that was below the surface, because my mother was very funny, warm, loving, kind, and very misunderstood because of that dichotomy of what was external versus what was underneath the surface. So I started to see pretty young what happened when people didn't understand, and how it only created more pain, more wounds, more problems for her. And it also became the reason I was good at anything, because I wasn't naturally super talented in any specific area, but because I had this ability that I learned through my experiences with my mother and in my family to listen in a different way, I became successful at things I should have never been successful in. Sports and career, I did things beyond my years. And I thought, what if everybody learned this? Wouldn't that change the world a little bit? So that's how I got into it.
When did you recognize that listening was more than just, like, it was something that you had developed into a
skill,
kind of expert level?
Yeah. So that's a process of unpacking that over the years. But my first experience was when I was in high school, that I was recognized. I think I got the Good Citizenship Award when I was in high school. And I thought, why did I get I did no volunteer work. I did nothing, specifically extracurricular for that award, but I was recognized because of the way I showed up for my classmates, how I understood them, and how, I was a community builder, basically, through this skill. So I started to realize that, and then I also knew as an athlete I wasn't the fastest or the strongest, but my ability to read the opponent, read the game, understand my teammates' lead, all those things, listening being the foundation for it, is how I was succeeding. So then experience after experience kind of reminded me of that along the way.
So what did you end up going to school for in college? Were you thinking that, I got to turn this into something I can do to help other people, or was it still kind of just simmering in the background?
It was simmering in the background. I thought I wanted to be a psychologist. I have a master's in psychology, but I wanted to do that because I wanted to help people. And as I often say, we go into the field to fix the crazy from which we come. And my family was helped by psychologists, so I wanted to help in that way. And I did do that the first part of my career. I spent the first 6 years of my career from 22 to 27, basically working with families very intensively. But my father was a businessman, and I fell in love with business pretty early, so I pivoted at that age. But yeah, it was always around communication, around people, around how to help others. But I always saw the problem wasn't what people were saying, it's what they didn't understand, from families to businesses. So that's when I started to dig into this more seriously.
So when you transitioned into more of a coaching role, was that where you started out? I'm going to start a coaching firm.
Yeah. I actually worked down the road from here. I worked at a place called Human Management Services, which was a freestanding employee assistance program, and we served all the companies in this area, from QVC to all the major hospitals to you name it. We had them on our list. And so I started as a counselor there because I had come from the counseling experience. I was a pretty high-level therapist, even at a young age, but I wanted to get into the organizational development work. So through that role, I quickly became the organizational development lead in the organization. So serving these companies around Chester County and Philadelphia County, I was going out and understanding their businesses, much like you do on an everyday basis, like understanding how to help them through making their people, again, show up through the soft skills. So that's where I made the shift. And then I was in an accident down the road here, an auto accident that changed the trajectory of my life and made me realize what it's like not to be understood, much like my mother, because I was in a lot of physical pain that most people didn't see post-accident. And I went, oh, this is not a good experience, that to not feel understood, even people who cared and tried to empathize. So at that point is when I really started to go, I got to do something different. And I ultimately started my own coaching practice and started working more intensively in the communication realm, specifically with organizations.
And you had your dad kind of help mentor you. What was kind of your strategy to start out and build the business?
Yeah, well, my dad was a insurance salesman to start his career. After he was a chicken feed salesman, because he grew up on a chicken farm, and then he made it into he was a financial planner. So he was serving small to medium businesses very successfully. You know, the part about my dad didn't really talk to me about the business. He talked to me about his clients. He knew them intimately, and he would say, you have to understand every aspect of their lives to really be able to serve them. So the example he was to me was how serving clients well really helped you build the business. And that's how he was successful. And it's harder to retain customers sometimes than it is to get new ones. So I was always touched by how much he cared and how much he knew and how personal it was for him. So when I started my own business, I showed up for my clients in a very similar way. And I got the advice of some really good people who said, you just got to start with one customer and then go from there. So I got a lot of good advice, but it was really understanding how to serve the customer that my dad taught me about.
And so at this point, were you focusing on listening as you're coaching businesses?
Yeah. So this was right around 2007 when I had my accident. I still worked as a consultant for the EAP. I was doing a lot of good work, but I was physically pretty broken and I was still really healing. So, and when I decided to go out on my own, I thought I was ready. I was physically at a better place and I was ready. And what I found is that as soon as I was in conference rooms, meetings, all the problems I was solving was around misunderstandings. So it was over about a year period that I'm like, well, I'm having the same conversation over and over and over again. And it's not what people said, it's what they didn't hear or understand. And those misunderstandings, I was making good money solving these problems, but I thought there's got to be a better way than just going in and, trying to be the hero that fixes that. How do we really change the whole system of communication? So that's when I started to go, this isn't sustainable. I could make money off of this for the rest of my career, but I wasn't really interested in participating in the problem that way. And because I was a therapist that was a systems therapist, I had a lot of training around how to fix systems. And I thought, our communication system's broken. We don't have a common language for listening. And from elementary classrooms to corporate meeting rooms, we're really teaching people how to say things better rather than how to listen to understand.
So can you break down the problem of like what is wrong with the way that most people listen?
It's the way we walk. You have two legs, you're born to walk. You have two ears, you're born to listen. And so only 2% of people worldwide have any kind of training in the skill, including myself. I have no formal listening training, ironically, even though I'm a master's from Penn. I was certified at Pennsylvania Hospital through high-level therapists and no formal listening training. So that's a pretty common story. So the problem is we're not skilled at it. We're just relying on our hearing, our intuitive abilities, some things we've picked up along the way, and we're overestimating our actual strength at this that exists. Yeah.
That's interesting.
Don't fight over me. You both had a question.
No, that's all right. No, I was just going to ask about, so what was the path then as you started realizing that you wanted to kind of shift your approach?
Yeah.
What was the strategy you put into place?
I wish I could say I had some magic wand and I'm like, problem fixed, but it was a process. So in 2010, 11, this may or may not ring a bell for you, but storytelling really got hot on the landscape of business. Like the neuroscience was changing dramatically. Simon Sinek came out with, Lead with the Why. Brene Brown talked about vulnerability. And so, we always know storytelling was the best way to sell things, to lead with communication, but it wasn't a natural skill. And suddenly it was like everybody and their mother was doing storytelling training. And my father was quite a storyteller. So I believed in the movement. And I started working with a guy named Mike Bosworth who wrote Solution Selling. And he wrote a storytelling book about what great salespeople do. And it was phenomenal. And I thought, this is great. And I talked with Mike quite a lot about this. However, it's really hard to tell a story unless you know what your audience needs to hear. And while there was a piece of how you have to kind of get the story, this was the real missing link. And I thought, we need the other side of storytelling. And so that's when I started to really, I understood this framework around how to really tell a story. I thought, it's the exact skill inside out. It's how you tell is how you also gather and listen to a story. And so that's when I started to build a system around that has evolved really over the last, decade plus to what's now the listening path, because the hardest thing to do is make something really simple.
Yeah, that's interesting. So for you, I wanted to get your kind of breakdown on what listening is. Is it trying to recognize when something interesting comes up and leaning into that, or is it more following the emotional tone and seeing sparks like, wait a minute, there's something there that they're not digging into enough or something?
Yeah.
Like, what is like the theory behind your listening?
Yeah. So my theory at the heart of it is that when you're listening, you're always listening to a story. So whether that's one word, one sentence, one paragraph, whether you're with the Uber driver or your son, you're in a story all the time. And your job as the listener is to organize the speaker to tell their story in a way you can understand.
So basically just helping them get the full story out.
Because
guiding the story. And
that's right.
Asking the right questions.
Yes, being the guide in the conversation. Part of it is asking the right questions. What we don't realize is that we're living in the middle of a movie. We're just dropped in constantly to the middle of a movie. How's your day? You say to your kid, good. You're in a movie. How's your project going? Oh, it's going great, boss. You're also in a movie. You're just not at the beginning. You're in the middle. And if you're a salesperson, you're going out to your customer. The problem they have is the middle of the movie. So we don't realize that people are telling their stories in a way that are out of order and that are already confusing. And we need to put structure around that. So leaders know that they have to structure messaging before they get in front of an all-hands meeting with their staff or in meetings. Structured messaging is what storytelling is and how we really think about what we're going to say. Most of the time we're in unstructured messaging. And that's where all the miscommunication really can fall down, because The storyteller's not structured, the speaker. The listener's not structured. So it's chaos that's creating all kinds of misunderstandings.
Yeah, I was going to ask, is there a benefit to the speaker to have someone else, I don't want to say subconsciously, but like carefully helping them tell the full story?
Yes. Aren't you doing that right now? Sorta.
Yeah,
Right?
The conversation.
Isn't that,
Yeah.
I mean, you have some jumping off points, but you don't have, you're gathering from me, piecing together, how did you come to this? We'll go back. Where did you start? You're organizing me to tell my own story. And we just don't think to do that when there's not a mic in front of us necessarily. But when we're in relationships, when we're with our customers, when with our employees, this is what we need to be doing. We're just not taught how to do it.
And it's funny, it always seems like it's in those stressful, emotional moments when the storytelling gets worse and worse.
Worse and worse.
And that's
Yes.
like, it's almost like therapy to help someone tell their story correctly.
Yeah. And
It's interesting to look at it
yeah,
that way.
and it helps it serves both parties really well. And because it's efficient, as well as it creates connection, it creates the person feeling valued, feeling heard, feeling understood. I believe that's the greatest gift you can give someone, is understanding. I don't need to agree with you, but I can understand you. And that alone solves a lot of problems.
Yeah, I could think about me and my wife if we're having a heated discussion for like an hour. Then at the end, it's like, wait a minute, that's what you're trying to say? It's like,
Right.
oh, okay, I can understand that.
Yeah,
Why didn't
and
you
if
say
I'd
that?
only gotten there sooner,
Yeah.
right? Both lenses are, they're contaminated a little bit. They're muddied. So we've overcomplicated listening because it's so misunderstood, and it's so focused on performative behaviors because that's all we know to attach to. I've often joked I've been selling air for a very long time because listening is like fog. It's everywhere, but it's hard to grasp and touch. And that's part of what I'm changing so that people can see it, feel it, touch it, and experience it in a different way. So it's kinesthetic and not just this intangible. Let me look at you. Let me give you thoughtful attention. Let me ask some good questions. No, there's a step-by-step process. And if you do it the same way every time, you'll get great results every time.
Do you have like a set of like principles that people should remember when they want to be better listeners?
Well, my first principle is I think we should always work to be better listeners, but it shouldn't be such hard work. So if you have the right tools, the work will do it for you. I'm not very mechanical, but I'll use a house metaphor. I'm not going to build a house without a hammer. I'm not going, without a saw. You need certain things or you can't build a proper foundation. The same is true in communication. If you don't have the tools to listen, to understand, you're not going to be successful. So there's a process and there's tools that we need, and it's based on I believe, like storytellers do, that the best way to learn things is through story. So the story of the listening path is you wouldn't go hiking in the woods without tools or supplies in your backpack. And we give you the tools and supplies you need to listen, to understand. So it's not magic. It's a very dedicated process. And each different stage of the process, you use certain tools. So I'm happy to talk about that if that's helpful.
Yeah, it's one of those things too, listening, like I think anyone can fall into if you're trying to listen to like you can almost screw up your whole narrative in your head and you're focusing too much and like, wait, where was I going with that? What were they saying? Like,
rehearsing, mind reading, judging, practicing. Yeah, all of it, because the brain is the greatest enemy. What's between our ears.
Staying relaxed and just keep letting it flow naturally. I'm sure that's part of the process.
And so because I was an athlete, for me, it's like being in the zone. I was on the tennis court a couple of weeks ago, and this one guy looks at me and goes, your brain's not off. And it's like, I don't have to think about listening. I just, because I've done it for so long and I know what I'm doing, that I pick up on so much stuff that I don't even have to think about it. Just like an athlete who really knows how to hit a golf ball or hit a tennis ball does it without a whole lot of, it's unconscious competence at a whole nother level. So my brain is pretty relaxed. I'm not usually in another, because I have these tools that are so built in me now because I've been doing it for decades.
Yeah, it's like muscle memory for your listening skills. Almost.
Yeah, but people have had one conversation that's changed dynamically just from understanding what the tools are. I mean, people have read my book and emailed me and said that changed my life just because they had some language and understanding of how to do it. So simple, yes. Easy, different matter, because easy means you don't have to practice it. You have to practice it. Skill building takes practice, just like going to the gym, or you get into shape by doing it. The simple part is that the process doesn't have to be so complicated.
Yeah, it's funny. Me and Jeremy, one of the coolest compliment we ever got, someone called us quiet and effective.
Yeah.
Which I thought was great, because I feel like we've closed so many more sales by just listening to clients than going in there with this big pitch of how amazing we are. You know, just let's hear what you need and see if we can find a solution to help you do that is so much more powerful than here's all the tools we've got. This one's going to knock it out of the park. This one's going to do this. And
it's so not how people sell, though, is it?
No.
They go in and tell, talk.
Often,
Versus, I had a call yesterday, and it was a good call in some ways, because somebody has a process that they can help other companies. I'm always happy to make referrals. I think do what the client needs. Like if I see a value, I'll make that introduction, and the person goes in and listens and understands. But we hung up the call and didn't ask anything about me, and I went, okay, well. Wait a second. So it's a relationship. You'll win a lot more favor if you just go in and understand before you try to sell anything. Yeah. And even if you don't, and I'm not saying you don't do it well, but even if you do that badly, but that's different enough to stand out. Mm-hmm. So what the problem is, most people are white knuckling, not talking. And so they can hardly contain themselves, because the anxiety of I'm supposed to be talking because I'm the salesperson is what takes over, and the product spewing begins. Yeah. Yeah,
it's like the funniest anomaly. Like you're in a room for an hour and you spoke for maybe 5 minutes and you're getting a hug at the end of it. It's like, oh, thank you. I love you too.
Yeah. I love, because I've been attributed the smartest person in the room because I've simply been able to restate what other people have said. And I'm like, I'd love to take credit for that. And maybe I will. But, it's being able to bring the different voices together and be able to tell that story back is a very, very powerful tool. People will assign much more of their intelligence to you than you deserve most days, at least in my case. So yeah, it's a superpower again, but most people, we don't have a good way to build this in. I had a podcast yesterday that I was doing with a psychologist, and I asked if she had listening training. One of the few that I've talked to that spent, a good bit of time on active listening, which same intention, but much more complicated. And she was 23 the first time. We're 23 years old and we're learning one of the most fundamental and foundational skills. That's rare. Think about 20, it's like if I learned to play golf and never, and all of a sudden I'm making all these mistakes. I got to unwind all that before I can learn a new way. We need to do this. We need to teach it sooner.
So do you advocate for everyone to take listening training?
So now we do. So over the last year and a half, I've built a scalable system from elementary classrooms to corporations. Most of my work over the course of my career has been service-based, where I do keynotes. I have teams that go out and do workshops, which are very, very powerful, and we'll continue to do that. But it doesn't meet the goal, which for me is to globalize listening education, and that's from elementary classrooms. So now I have a licensable program.
That's the Listening Path.
That's the Listening Path elementary program, and then there's in December we'll have a high school and corporate program that are similarly licensable, so that we can create more scale and accessibility.
So what I was going to say, what's your dream? Is it to integrate this teaching into all classrooms as well as businesses, or what's your grand vision?
It's pretty grand. So I want to say this I know how grand this sounds, but I want to be the Kleenex of listening, and I want to globalize it into classrooms around the world, because it doesn't exist, and because I've created a language that's so simple and scalable, and a way to teach it. The hardest thing that I've had over my career is, you'll appreciate this, is how do I scale me? Mm-hmm. And what I used to do, people would used to say to me, "You're amazing," and I'd be like, "Oh, that's great." But what was amazing? And they would say things like, "You did everything that you taught us to do," but I'm not sure everybody would notice that. And I thought, this looks like a magic trick. It's not a magic trick. And I'm not revealing the code clearly enough, early enough. So when I started to look at it that way, and I thought, let me just imagine, magicians have a trick, they can show you where they pulled the rabbit from, they can show you where they cut the saw in half. That's what I realized I had to do. So I figured that out, and that was how I could scale other people to teach it. But that's, you don't have enough bodies to reach the kind of people I want to reach. So when I realized video was the answer, that I could animate myself to become the teacher of the path, so that it has a very consistent, simple way to be, and fun way for the teachings to happen. The practice is what anybody can scale. So if you're an HR manager, if you're a manager in a company, if you're an elementary classroom teacher, once you know the tools, it's just a matter of using all the situations to put them into practice, and that's where the ripple effect goes. It gets crazy good.
Do you have an individual, like if some adult guy or woman who does sales wants to take just a single course for themselves, or is it more group?
It's not business to customer that way. My book, What Does It Cost You Not to Listen, has the framework in it. But at this point, it is not one-to-one that way. We service organizations and businesses of all sizes, and we'll serve schools. And the reason I've kept it that way is because I want, my mission is that education should be something everybody's entitled to, and that if schools need to own this so that everybody has the ability to learn the skill rather than just the privileged. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But if somebody wants to learn this, where can they pick up a copy of the book?
They can go to Barnes & Noble, Amazon, and, all the major outlets, that wherever they buy books, and audio, hard copy, soft copy, whatever it's like sneakers. You want your books the way, you want your sneakers the way you want them. So, and the last third of the book is the path and the tools to understanding. So, yeah.
So that is available. That's
great. Yeah, that's out.
Okay, awesome. Well, we'll wrap this episode here. We're going to get into some more detailed stuff. We have 2 episodes coming up: how listening impacts culture and drives success, and how managers can tap into passion and purpose with their team. So, Christine, thank you so much again for coming on. And we'll be back for episode 2 soon.
Sounds great. Thanks.
Stories from the Top is your guide to successful business development. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, or find Edge of Cinema on YouTube. Stories from the Top is an Edge of Cinema production, hosted by Matthew Skura and Jeremy Schmidt. To learn more or get in touch, visit edgeofcinema.com/podcast.